Students, this is a reminder. You need to have your cell phones and earbuds put away in the hall, please. First period teachers, please remember to do a dress code check at the beginning of class. There will be a virtual men's soccer interest meeting on Monday, September 21st at 3:15 for any students interested in playing soccer in January. Interested students can contact Coach McCray or Coach Grandpa for the link. SBLA is conducting a uniform drive. Please bring clothes that are in good condition to Mr. Haddock. Please join the SBLA this year. Remember, you have to sign up and pay again, even if you joined last year.
Good morning, everyone. We do have painters in the building today. Teachers, make sure and do not remove those wet paint signs. They need to be in place so that teachers, staff, and students can see where there is paint. I would ask too that the paint signs cannot be placed directly on wet paint. So therefore you need to watch that area that you come through so that you don't get any paint on your clothes. Again, we appreciate what facilities maintenance is doing to maintain our building. Also, teachers, remember tomorrow's faculty meeting will be after school at 3:15. There is a Zoom invite there, and there will be a short presentation there. We don't want to keep you all day on Friday, but just know that there will be a Zoom meeting tomorrow, faculty meeting. We have to do some updates that Pitt County Schools needs for us to go ahead and take care of after our meeting with the principals on this week. We will have music tomorrow. Selection will be from a combination of artists, and I think we gave the hit the other day of what big hit did Coldplay and the Chainsmokers have recently. That would be the one to be played. Thank you very much and have a great Thursday.
All right, good morning, everyone. Students at home, can you guys hear me? Because my desktop isn't working. I can't get Wi-Fi on it, so I'm using, yes, perfect. Great. All right, so this morning we're going to start on the skeleton. There are actually two parts to a skeleton. Your axial skeleton, which is highlighted in blue, and that is the skull, your vertebrae, the ribs, the sternum, and then you have this small bone that on the skeleton here is actually, it's attached to the skeleton, but in real life, it's the only bone in the body that does not articulate with another bone. Remember, articulation is when two bones come together. The hyoid bone is actually the bone that the tongue attaches to, okay? So it's kind of like back in here, and you can see it's pointing right up in here. All right, so that part of it is the axial skeleton. I want you to take note that this pie-shaped part of the vertebrae, that is your sacrum and your coccyx, that is the vertebrae. It is not part of the pelvis, okay? So this right here, that area, that is your sacrum and your coccyx. The coccyx is the tailbone. All right, so as your cranium actually has 8 bones that are fused together. Remember I showed you that picture of the fetus yesterday and all the bones were still kind of separated from each other. As they fuse together, they create these joints called synarthrosis joints. So the synarthrosis joints are immovable joints, and we're going to talk about that. But they create the sutures of the skull. So this bone here up front, named for being up front. Okay, so bones are named for their location, what they're near. Maybe it might be near a muscle or, you know, a specific organ. In this case, this one's up front, frontal bone. Okay, and then you have these 2 huge bones here, one on each side. Those are your parietal bones. Okay, and then here, kind of makes sense. We all know where our temples are at. Right there is your temporal bone. And in the very back, right in here is your occipital bone. Now, there are two more bones of the skull, and you cannot see them. What those two bones do is they actually make up the floor of the skull. So if you were to take the skull off of this pole, on the bottom here are two bones, and those are called the sphenoid and the ethmoid. You can actually see part of the sphenoid here, and that's just a small part of it. And then the ethmoid is right there, that kind of dark pink color. Okay? All right, so again, your frontal bone here in yellow, parietal bone, they're very large, and there's two of them, one on each side. Temporal bone, occipital bone, here is part of your ethmoid and part of your sphenoid and part of the ethmoid bones. Again, those two bones make up the floor of your skull. Now, your facial bones, pretty easy. I think there's a total of 14. And again, these are fused together as well. So you've got your zygomatic arches here in the dark green. The zygomatic arches are our cheekbones. Okay, everybody has different types of cheekbones. You know, some are really high up, some are, you know, barely there. Your maxilla, these two bones here that are fused together, they make up your upper jaw. And then the very bottom one here in the dark purple is your mandible. It is just one. It is not fused together anywhere. The easiest way to remember the mandible is, everybody watching? Mandible, man, I can chew. Mandible. Okay, did you see that, Sierra? Mandible, man, I can chew. Mandible. Got it? You'll never forget it, okay? So, unfortunately, those at home, you didn't get to see it, but Mr. Skeleton here was talking. So those are the facial bones. The other bone I'll need you to know is the nasal bone, okay? The lacrimal, these conchi here, you don't need to know about those until the respiratory system, which unfortunately moved to Health Science 2, okay? All right, so again, here's the hyoid bone. It is attachment for the tongue. It is the only bone in the body that does not articulate with another bone. Remember, articulation is when two bones meet, okay? Not fused together like the skull. It's where two bones meet. This one does not articulate with anything. It is the attachment point for the tongue. The other thing about the hyoid bone is that's how they can determine if somebody was hanged, if somebody was strangled to death, because that's a bone that would be broken. Okay, very hard to break that bone because it's located up in here, but that's how they can determine if a person has been hanged or strangled. All right, axial skeleton, and I've actually got the excuse me, I keep reading that top line. Spinal column. It should say vertebrae. See, these new PowerPoints have too many layman's terms, and you guys aren't going to learn anything if I keep leaving those layman's terms up there. Anyway, so I've got a vertebrae model over there for you guys to look at. You guys can go up and touch it. Those of you at home, I know you won't be able to until Tuesday. But anyways, how to figure this out. So the first 7 are your cervical vertebrae. And you can remember how many there are because most people will eat breakfast around 7, all right? The next ones are your thoracic vertebrae. This helps to make up your thoracic cage. That is 12. Most people will eat lunch at 12. The other way to remember how many thoracic vertebrae there are is because there are 12 ribs. And the ribs attach to the vertebrae on the dorsal side of the body. Then you have 5 lumbar vertebrae. Remember when we were doing the abdominal regions and we had the hypochondriac region and then we had the lumbar regions, okay, right and left side. Well, that region is named for these 5 vertebrae right here. Now, really, honestly, most people don't eat dinner until, what, 6, 7, 8 o'clock now? But grandma and grandpa still eat dinner at 5, okay? And then, again, remember I told you the triangle shape is, this part is not a part of the pelvis. You're gonna have to remember that. So this green part here, that is your sacrum. And it's actually made up of 5 bones that are fused together. And then your coccyx is your tailbone, okay? And that's made up of 4 bones fused together. All right, ribs and sternum. So the sternum's pretty easy. You've got your manubrium, which is the light green. You have the body, which is the pink. And then this is the xiphoid process. Remember we did first aid and we talked about the xiphoid process with the Heimlich maneuver, and even with CPR. If you do CPR wrong and you're too high or too low, excuse me, with CPR you would be too low, you can break that xiphoid process because it just kind of, there it is right there, just on the tip. Now with the ribs, there are a total of 12 ribs, but we have 7 true ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. True ribs meaning they attach to the thoracic vertebrae in the back and then directly attach to the sternum in the front, okay? Then we have 5 false ribs, but we're only going to talk about these 3 first. So there's 3, 1, 2, 3. Those 3 ribs attach to the thoracic vertebrae, and then they attach by cartilage to that 7th true rib. Remember, the 7 true ribs directly attach to the sternum. Now, there's a little bit of cartilage there, but so those 3, and they're called false ribs, attach by cartilage to the 7th rib, and then that 7th rib attaches to the sternum. And then the very last 2 right here, and it looks like on here, it looks like that second one is attached to that one. If you could see a real skeleton, these are the floating ribs. They're called floating ribs because they attach to the thoracic vertebrae, but they do not attach to anything else. They're just kind of sitting there floating. Now what the function of those floating ribs are, they help to protect the kidneys. The kidneys are located about right in here, okay? So you have 7 true ribs. They attach directly to the sternum. You have a total of 5 false ribs. 3 of those false ribs attach by cartilage to the 7th rib, which then attaches to the sternum. And then you have 2 floating ribs. They attach to the thoracic vertebrae back here, but they do not attach to anything on the anterior portion of the body. So then this whole thing makes up your thoracic cage. All right, so the appendicular skeleton. Appendicular skeleton are your extremities, arms, legs, your shoulder girdle, which makes up your clavicle and your scapula, and then your pelvic girdle, okay, which is your pelvis. Remember, the sacrum and coccyx are not a part of the pelvis. They look like it, but they're not, okay?
So what divides the sacrum and the coccyx? They're like the same thing.
Say that again?
What divides the sacrum and the coccyx on the back part?
Nothing.
So it's just
It's
like
areas.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of anatomy is areas. All right, so the shoulder girdle is made up of the clavicle, which is your collarbone, and the scapula, which is your shoulder blade, okay? And then you've got your arm. The humerus is the largest bone in your arm, okay? Not in the body, but in your arm. So you have your humerus, and then again, what position is this diagram in? The anatomical position, right? So that we know this right here is a thumb and not the pinky, okay? So when we're looking at the lower arm, the bone on the thumb side is the radius, right there. The bone on the pinky side is the ulna. Remember I told you that you can check a pulse above that radius bone? That's your radial artery. Now, your hand, you've got carpals. There are about 8 bones of your wrist. Those are short bones. What do the short bones do for us? They give us what?
Or dexterity.
Dexterity, correct. Very good. Now, the bones of the palm of your hand, those are metacarpals. Okay, so those right there, ones I was just hitting, are metacarpals. And then your fingers are phalanges. Same thing as your toes. Your toes are called phalanges also. Now, in college anatomy and physiology, you will learn the names of those wrist bones. Okay? So this is going to help you fill out the diagram labeling that is due on Monday. Pelvic girdle and the leg. So the pelvic girdle is actually made up on each side of 3 bones that have fused together. The upper part, this main part, this right here, is called the ilium. Now, who can remember what these flat bones, excuse me, it's not a flat bone, it's a regular bone, but what these broad spaces are used for? Very good. So the tendons attach to this broad area right in here, so for muscle attachment. Okay, so the ischium is this part here, the little, it's that you can actually also think of those as your butt bone. You ever have somebody sit on your lap and their butt's all bony? You are actually feeling their ischiums, okay? Not the coccyx, you're feeling their ischium. And then the pubis bone is up front here, there and there. This is the symphysis pubis. That is a piece of cartilage, and it barely moves. When do you think it would move on ladies? Birth. Very good. Yes. All right. Now to the leg. So the largest bone in the body is the femur. Very hard to break, but it does break. When that bone breaks, it has to be fixed by surgery. You can't just kind of put it together and wrap a cast around it. Okay, you actually have to get the pins and the screws. The kneecap is called your patella. The largest bone of your lower leg, and this is the bone that actually bears all the weight. So although there's 2 bones in your lower leg, only one carries all of my weight, okay? And that is your tibia. It is the medial bone, so that means it's closer to the middle, right? All right, and then the lateral bone is called the fibula. No weight bearing whatsoever, none. The only thing that tibia does is it helps to, one, it does hematopoiesis, which is what again? Creation of red blood cells, and then it helps to attach muscles to it. Okay, that's all the fibula does. No weight bearing whatsoever. Now, you can't see the heel, but the heel is called the calcaneus. And I do have it up here, calcaneus. The ankle bones are called tarsals. So think of carpals and tarsals this way. Carpals are in your wrist. When you drive a car, your hands are on the steering wheel. So your wrists are near the steering wheel to drive a car. Carpals. Whereas tarsals are near your toes. TNT, okay? These are just little things to help you. The instep of your foot, right there, you have metatarsals. So like the palm of your hand, you have metacarpals. The instep of your foot are metatarsals. And then the toes are called phalanges, just like your fingers. All right, joints. There are actually 3 categories of joints: diarthrosis, synarthrosis, and amphiarthrosis. Diarthrosis joints are the most freely movable, okay? They give us just about every movement that we have. The first one is the ball and socket. That would be the shoulder, and it articulates the humerus articulates with the clavicle and the scapula. And then your femur bone articulates with the pelvis. Okay, so The socket is actually in the pelvis, and then the femur bone actually has the ball on it. So that gives us the most freedom. Okay, this huge range of motion that I can do this with. Those of you at home cannot see me. The hinge joint, these are only to move in one direction. Okay, so here's my elbow moving in one direction. What's another hinge joint? Your knee, yes. Okay. One of the things I could not stand, I could take smells, I could take blood, organs, all that. I could not stand seeing a broken bone. It would make my stomach turn. And it was nothing to see. I mean, to see the arm go the opposite direction is just not normal. You know, it just, or the leg is, you know, the foot's way up here by their hip, and you know it's not supposed to do that. Yeah, I don't do broken bones well. All right, pivot joint allows rotation. So we've got that in our neck, okay, our atlas and our axis. Remember, those were two vocab words, our C1 and C2. Our forearm, okay, and then our wrist. We've got some pivoting going on in there. And then gliding joints, they glide against each other, wrist again, and then the vertebrae. Okay, so although I can bend like this, it's just that I have the movement with those discs in there, but they do more gliding than anything. Almost done, you guys. Amphioarthrosis joints, these are slightly movable. Remember the symphysis pubis I showed you between the pubic bones? And here at class, you guys can see it, it's right here. That is a amphioarthrosis joint, meaning it slightly moves. And then your synarthrosis joints, these are immovable, they are fixed, and they are the sutures of your skull, okay? No movement whatsoever. All right, functions of the skeletal system. Hemopoiesis, same thing as hematopoiesis. Hemopoiesis is the making of red blood cells. It occurs in the red bone marrow located in the spongy bone of the epiphysis of a long bone. Mineral storage. Our bones store calcium and phosphorus. Remember yesterday I talked briefly about how calcium is stored. The fatty tissue of the yellow marrow kind of helps with the ATP, Krebs cycle, all that stuff, and somehow we get calcium out of it. But it also holds, you know, we store calcium in our bones. Movement, voluntary movement. Our bones just don't move by themselves. Protection, again, we know that by our cranium and our ribs and sternum. And then support, it helps to support our muscles. All right, so that is it for the PowerPoint. So get your note guide out. Does everybody have it at home? Everybody here have it out? Goodness, my face, right under my nose starts sweating. I guess that's from breathing. Okay. Miss you. Can't say your name, but we miss you. You know who you are. All right. We good? These notes are easy. Easy peasy. Axial skeleton is your skull and cranium. Okay. Oh, that's right. Thank you so much. Let me zoom it in. Bam. How's that? Good. All right. So our skull and cranium are vertebrae, ribs and sternum, and then the hyoid bone. The appendicular is the shoulder girdle, which is your clavicle, clavicle, and scapulae. That's plural for scapula. Your arms, wrist, and hands. I'll see, it's wanting me to just put scapula. Your pelvic girdle, ilium, ischium, and pubis. And then your legs, calcaneus, ankle, and feet. How's everybody doing? Everybody at home, we good? Ready to move on? All right, diarthrosis joints. So remember, 3 categories: diarthrosis, ambiarthrosis, and synarthrosis. Diarthrosis joints are the freely movable. They give us the most range of motion. 1, ball and socket. Allows most movement, and examples are shoulders and hips. 2, hinge. Moves in one direction. Examples, elbow and knee. 3, pivot. There's actually a pivot, like in our thumb, there's a pivot. Allows rotation. Examples, neck, forearm, and wrist. And then the last one is gliding. Bones glide across each other. Examples, vertebrae, wrist, and ankles. Moving up. Amphiarthrosis, these are slightly movable joints. An example, symphysis pubis. I knew I spelled it wrong. Synarthrosis, immovable, if that's a word. Fixed. Examples, skull sutures. Okay, we ready to move down to functions? Okay. Okay, we good at home? All right, last part. Hematopoiesis. Now, why is this different on here? I don't know. Okay. Mine's different on my sheet. Makes red blood cells. Occurs in the red bone marrow, located in the spongy bone of the epiphysis of a long bone. So what's so special about hematopoiesis? Why do we need red blood cells?
That carry like oxygen and nutrients.
Yes, red blood cells carry oxygen. The other blood cells are made there as well. White blood cells help fight infection. All right, and then mineral storage, calcium and phosphorus. One of our glands actually tells, I'm trying to remember which one it is, the thyroid, will tell our body to either, will basically communicates with the bones and says, okay, hold on to calcium because we have too much in the blood. If our blood level calcium goes low, then that another gland sends a signal and says, okay, release calcium. It's pretty cool how our body works. All right, movement is voluntary. Protection, vital organs. Let's go ahead and put skull and then the thoracic cage. Thoracic cage is your ribs, sternum, and those thoracic vertebrae. And then support, muscles, and posture. Because as we're going to learn tomorrow, there are some vertebrae disorders that can mess up our posture. Okay, how are you guys here in class? Good? You guys at home, are we good? Do I need to move up? Let me know. Okay, anybody else? Okay, then I'm gonna assume everybody's good. I'm gonna stop share. Sorry about having to be on my desktop. No, it's not my desktop, it's my laptop. Something's wrong with my desktop. So anyways, basically, the midterm quiz is due tonight, quiz 4. The midterm chart is due tomorrow, and I gave you an example of how to fill that out, because some people were having some questions about that. And then review questions are due on Tuesday, right? Yes, Tuesday. because the note guide, we're going to finish up the note guide tomorrow. So most of you should just go ahead and submit it. But some people need a couple of days. So I'm giving you till Monday, and then the diagram labeling. If you have any questions on that diagram labeling, please email me and let me know what those are. Okay. And that's it. So any questions from you guys at home? Let me get you those people who are here. Like I said, I cannot call out names any longer. Look, Rachel Hudson's here. See her? There she is. Hanging out in my barn. Okay, so I've got you guys. If you have any questions, stay on and I can answer those. Otherwise, see you tomorrow.